Hello and welcome. Today we're going to make a little chainsaw cat toy. The things you'll need to complete this cat toy are some worsted weight yarn and a color for the motor part and a color for the blade. You want a 4mm crochet hook, some yarn needles, catnip if your cat likes catnip, some sort of stuffing. I just use like polyfill, regular polyfill, but you can use whatever you like to use the stuffing. And a pair of scissors. That's everything you'll need. So let's go ahead and get started. We're starting with the back handle. We're going to make a slip knot. So we're crossing our working end over the short end, holding right where we have crossed them. We're going to reach through and pull up and then just pull that part tight. So there's our slip knot, and then we are going to chain 7. So we're wrapping our yarn over a hook and pulling it through until you have a chain of 7. Okay, we have all 7 of our chains here. We're going to be working through the back bump rather than through the chains, just to make both sides of our handle a little more uniform. So we're turning that chain so you can see that little row of bumps across the back. So not that very first one, but the second one from our hook. We're going to go in and we're just going to single crochet. So we're going to wrap, pull up, then we'll have 2 loops on our hook. We'll wrap, pull through both of those. And we're going to keep going all the way down, again working through the back bumps only. So your chain, the front of your chain is on this side, and we're working through the back. When you get to the end, you should have 6 single crochets. So go ahead and keep going. Once you get to the end and we have all 6, we will do the next part. The back handle row is done. Now we're going to be working this way. So to start that off, we're going to chain 2. And then we're coming back across, but rather than single crocheting, we're going to be slip stitching. So we're going to make those slip stitches as loose as we can. So you're going into the second one from the hook, wrap, pull through, and then we're going to pull through the last loop there. And we are going to work a slip stitch into each corner of that row. So there's 2 more. Slip stitch, so we're just pulling right through both sides. And going into the last corner, and then we're gonna chain 2 out here. So once we finish those 2 chains on the end, we're gonna turn and we're working back the other way. So that second, not this one, but the next one, that second chain, we're gonna go in. We're going to wrap, pull up, and we're just creating a single crochet, and we're going to do that across all the slip stitches we made as well. So just digging in. If you made them loose enough, you might not have a problem, but for whatever reason, no matter how hard I try to make my slip stitches loose, they're always pretty tight. So when we get to the end of this little piece, we should have 4 single crochets worked. And once you have all 4, we will chain 1, and after that we're just going to turn, and we're going to be working 3 more rows just with plain single crochets across. Okay. So we finish, we chain 1, we're going to turn it, and we're just doing a single crochet in each stitch back and forth. Every time you get to the end, you chain 1 to turn. So it'll be 4 in each row for the next 3 rows. So we will go ahead and work those, and then we'll meet back up for the next part. So we finished those 4 rows and we turned. So now we're looking back at the other direction here. We are going to be working into the back loops of that row. We're going to go into the back loop. And we're going to slip stitch this first one, so we're just wrapping the yarn and pulling it through both those. And then we're going to be joining the handle to this back part that'll become like the motor part of our chainsaw. So we're going in, and then we're going to get the first corner of that row, and we're going to slip stitch all that together. nice and loose. And then we're going to do the same thing in the next, so just the other corner of that row. Just going through the top of the row there. We're going to slip stitch that, and then slip stitch into the very last one. Okay, so now we're going to be working around the back of this, so that this handle will be on the outside. This is going to be our inside. Once we finish those last slip stitches across there, we join the little handle. We're going to turn it so that we are looking at the outside of the toy, and we are going to single crochet 4 back across those slip stitches. So we're just going in, we're going to wrap, pull up, wrap, pull through 2, and again. And once we get to the end here, we are going to be working down the sides of the rows. So we're shooting for 4 single crochets down the side, just working into the sides of the rows. So just going in, wrap, pull up, wrap, pull through 2. Doesn't have to be super perfectly spaced. We're just getting in there where we can, making sure that we end up with 4. When you get down to the bottom, we'll be working 4 across the top there where we started our handle. So going in, single crochet, and once we get to this end, we're doing the same thing across the rows. And just working 4 up the side. Once we finish that 4th one, we're going to find that very first stitch and join. So going in, wrap, pull through that one on the hook. We're going to chain 1, and now we are just going to be single crocheting around for the next 3 rows or rounds, now that we're working in around. So you're just going in, single crochet, and you should end up with 16 single crochets at the end of each of these rounds. So go ahead and finish those next 3, and then we'll meet back together for the next part. Okay, we've finished all of those rounds. Now we're going to be working a decrease. This one's going to be a little different. We are working in the back loop only. So we're going to go ahead and chain 1. We're turning it so we can see the loops of our thing there. We're going to go in the back of the first stitch. We're going to wrap, pull up. We're going to go in the back of the next stitch. We're going to wrap, pull up, and then we're going to wrap around our hook and pull through all 3 of those on the hook. And we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going into the back loop only, wrap, pull up. Next one, wrap, pull up, and then we're going to wrap over the hook and work all of those together. So you're going to repeat that all the way around. That's going to take us from 16 stitches down to 8. Once we finish that, we will move on to the next part. Once we finish all of our decreases and we're down to 8 stitches around the top there, before we slip stitch to join, we're going to just do a couple little things. So that starting tail, if your tail ended up on the outside, we're going to thread it through a yarn needle, and then we're going to just bring that to the inside of the toy. We don't have to weave it in or anything. We're just going to pull it onto that side and then just leave it on the inside of the toy. So once you've got that threaded on, we're just going through as close to wherever it's coming out of so that it doesn't stick up or anything funny. Pull it through, and then you can either tuck the rest of it in, or you can just trim off whatever extra bits you have there. And then while this is still a little bit more open, so before we slip stitch, we're going to take catnip if you want catnip in your cat toy. Maybe it's just a regular toy for you, so you don't need catnip. But if you are doing catnip, do it first. That way it doesn't get messy. And then put your polyfill in, and we'll work our way into our next step. So go ahead and put in whatever you want. So now that we've got all of our stuffing in there, we can join the very first stitch of that round to the last. We're just slip stitching through there. And we are going to cut the orange yarn or whatever color you're using, but we're gonna do a fairly long tail. We're going to use this piece to sew close that last hole and to make our top handle. So once you've trimmed it, we're just going to knot off that last one. So we're wrapping our yarn over a hook, pulling that hook through the last loop, and we're gonna pull it nice and tight. Now we're gonna take the end and thread it onto our yarn needle. Once you have that yarn needle on there, we're going to go ahead and grab the toy. We're going to see where our back handle is, and we're going to just like kind of smoosh this in half so you want it to be in line, the smooshed half in line with that back handle. And we are going to go through the back loops only, and we're going to close it up by going through the back loop of the very last stitch and the very first. Making sure we got enough to match up here. So there's 4, so we're going to go across, well there's 8 stitches, so we're going to go across 4 times. Just the back loop. We want to leave those outside loops or front loops available because that's how we're going to attach our chainsaw part of the, or saw part of the chainsaw, I don't know. Anyway, so this last one, making sure you're only getting the back loops. Hardest one to see here. Oh, we got it, okay. And then we're gonna knot that off. So you're just pulling through there, oof. I caught a little extra, there we go. And pulling that nice tight. We're gonna go through there, and then we're making our top handle here. So we're seeing that's kind of where the center is. So 2 rows up from the handle, and then those 2 stitches in the center are gonna stay there. We're gonna go 1 outside of those 2, and then down to come back up. So just kind of using that stitch as a guide. Once you're there, we're going to reclaim our hook. So we're going through that loop. We're going to pull it nice and tight so it's like the size of our hook. And then we're going to chain 10. So you're wrapping over, pulling through till you have 10. Halfway there. And once you have those 10, we're going to have to take off our yarn needle for a moment. We're going to wrap and pull through that last one to tie it off. Now we're going to rethread the rest of the tail onto the yarn needle. Once you've got that threaded on, we're just making sure that our top handle here isn't twisted. We don't want it like looped around a bunch of times, nice and flat. And then checking again where those 2 stitches coming up from the handle are. We're going to go 1 over. And come on down. Making sure they are even. There we go. So we're just pulling that in there nice and tight. And then once you're sure they're even, we can knot it off. So you're going to go back through, keeping that as low as you can, as tight as you can, just making a simple knot there. Pulling that in. Making sure that's nice and secure, and then we'll take that tail and just kind of drive it through the toy. With our scissors, we'll snip that away. So the motor part with our handles is done. We're going to attach the silver yarn to those outside loops or front loops of that very last part we worked. So go ahead, grab your silver yarn. So we are starting at the very bottom, so where they folded in half, that very first stitch there. We're going to go through. So you just have that 1 loop. We're going to go through there. We're going to attach the silver yarn, so we're just pulling it through, and we are going to make a little knot there, just to make it nice and secure for our kitties, or for yourself. Whatever, it's fine with me. It doesn't have to be for a cat. Okay, so from here we're gonna chain 1, we're going to work 1 single crochet into that same spot. So we've attached, we're going in on the next one, another plain single crochet. We do have 2 decreases coming up, so this is going to take us from 4 on each side, or 8 total, to 6 total. So we're going to go in the next one, and then the one right next door to that. A little fiddly. If you need to do you know, the decrease where you pull them through, you can, but if you can get both of those on that hook at the same time, then all you gotta do is wrap, pull through, and finish that single crochet. So now the very next one will also be a decrease. The same idea, maybe you're just going through those 2 loops, the next one and the one after. We wrap, pull through both of those, we wrap, we pull through the 2 on the hook, and then we have 2 regular single crochets in those last 2. Once we get to the bottom, we're just kind of trying to keep the tail out of our way. It'll end up on the inside of the saw blade. Oof, fiddly at the end there, but we can do it. Okay, so once you get that last one, we're going to join, so going into that very first stitch, trying to make sure you get both front and back loop there. Wrap, pull through, and then we're just slip stitching, so we're going through the next one. Okay, so again, just trying to keep that inside tail out of your way. We're going to chain 1, and we are going to single crochet all the way around, so it's 6 single crochets in each round. We're going to keep going until our chainsaw blade is as long as we want it to be, and that's going to be for 7 more rows. So that's going to be for 7 more rows. So this one and then 6 more after that. So go ahead, keep going. We're going to slip stitch to join at the end of each round, chain 1, and then just keep going, 6 in every round, and I will meet you at the end of those next 7, and we'll do the last couple of bits. Our 7 saw blade rows are done. We are going to decrease one last round here, and then we're just going to make our chain part of our chainsaw here. So we'll chain 1, and then we are going to decrease all the way around. So we're just going through the front loops only of those stitches. We're going to wrap, pull through both of those, and then wrap, pull through the 2 on the hook. And so this is going to take us from 6 stitches down to 3. When we get to the end of this round, we will join, we'll slip stitch to join. Then we're going to be cutting away our silver yarn. So we are going to reattach it in a new place when we're done. So just the front loops, wrap, pull through. Okay, so we're gonna get our scissors. We're gonna cut long enough that we can use it to weave the ends closed and tie off and all that. It doesn't have to be crazy long. So we have finished. We're going 1, 2, 3. We're finding that very first one. It's a little fiddly to get into without accidentally catching anything across from it, which is the goal. And then we'll slip stitch that first and last one. We're gonna wrap over the hook and pull through that last piece. So now that's tied off. We're gonna go ahead and get our yarn needle, thread that on there. So we've got our yarn needle on there. We don't really need to weave closed here, but we'll just go through the top with that thread and tie that off, pull it as tight as you can. And we're going to take that tail and we're just going to kind of send it through the center of that blade. And then we'll cut off the extra. And before we reattach the silver in our new place here, we want to just make sure that where we flatten the blade here lines up with the handle. So it should be centered with the top handle and then kind of right in line with that back handle. Okay, and once you feel pretty sure that that's nice and straight, nice and lined up, we're gonna start at the bottom. So we're just gonna take our hook through those stitches, So we're just kind of going, let me see if I can get a little less in there. So we're going right through kind of that space in between those bumps. Does that make sense? Let me see if I can focus in a little. So we're going in the spaces between the bumps. We're going to attach our yarn. So we're just going to grab that silver yarn. We're going to pull it through there. And then we're going to leave that hook in there, leave that loop on there. And just like we did before, we're going to tie it. Let's just give it a little nice tight double knot, and this will get pulled through the toy later, but for now it'll just kind of hang out down there. So once we're there, we are going to chain 2, and then in that same spot we attached it, we're just going to go through and slip stitch, and then we are going to slip stitch into those next 2 spaces. So same thing, that little space between the bumps. We're just working our way in there. It's a little fiddly, a little tight, but once we're done with this part, that's it, we're done. So just getting in there, we're going through and then slip stitch into the next one, and then we're gonna chain 2. Pretty much see where this is going. 1, 2, and then slip stitch back into that same spot. And again, so we're just repeating that all the way to the other end. So we're going through, slip stitching into those spaces between those bumps, and then you'll chain 2 and slip stitch into that same spot again. So you're going all the way around, trying to stay on the outside of the blade all the way back to here. And when we get back there, we'll meet back up to finish her off. So when we get to that last one, we're doing the same thing where we're going to chain 2, we're going to slip stitch in there, and then we are cutting our, I'm going to start over with that slip stitch. Once we finish that one, then we are cutting that silver yarn, and we're going to tie it off. So we're wrapping that yarn over the hook, pull it through that last loop. Now she's all tied off. All we've got left to do here is to thread these last 2 tails onto our yarn needle one at a time, and we're just gonna shoot them through the toy, trim off the extra. And there we go. Once all your tails are tucked in, you are officially done. Your little chainsaw's all done. Now it's ready to give to your kitty cat friends. Anyway, I hope you had fun. Thank you for joining me. See you soon. Bye.